As I just mentioned, Alex Brill is the founder and CEO of Matrix Global Advisors, and he's resident fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, where he studies and works on healthcare reform, pharmaceutical spending, and drug innovation, among other issues. And I should mention that he just had, I have it on yellow paper and not the really cool look. He's just issued today, as I understand it, a paper called Potential Savings from Accelerating U.S. Approval of Complex Generics. This is you, right? Same Alex Brill, right, Alex?
That's me.
Thank you. So I've just pretty much read the executive summary. But my understanding is I just mentioned you, and I mentioned Canada and Europe and said, hey, here are these other places where complex generics are available in these other places. You've gone through and looked at 7 specific complex generic drugs and looked at what the potential cost savings are in America. But rather than me telling that story, why don't you?
Sure. Thanks, Steve. That was a great interview with Dr. Troy. I think she shed a lot of light on her role and the importance of what a complex generic is and the importance of having more complex generics come to market in the United States. What the paper does, and I can get you a copy that's not printed on yellow paper. I'll get you a copy on white paper if you'd like. What the paper does is it looks at 7 products that we were able to identify where either Canada, Canadian Health, or the Europeans, EMA, have approved a generic of a complex product, and that product is available in those markets. And these are not, these are the FDA's peer regulatory agencies, right? These are first world. As Dr. Troy said, the FDA may be number one, but the Canadians and the Europeans are close behind. These are reputable regulatory agencies. They have found a way to work with the generic sponsors to approve those products, generics of those products, and those products have come to market in either Europe or Canada or both, and are generating savings there. So we said that those products seem reasonable to think that it'd be reasonable for the FDA to do the same, to approve those products here. A lot of policymakers have talked about the long approval process for complex products. We've seen members of Congress, we've seen former FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb talk about this. We need to do better on this front. We need to accelerate these processes. And what the paper does is it asks the question, if those products were available in the United States today, generics of these products, how much savings might we expect? Is it $50, $500, $5 billion? What is it? The way we came to those numbers is we looked at the sales of the brand products in 2019. We made some assumptions about the types of competition, the degree of competitive dynamics we'd expect among these products, and ran a variety of assumptions through a model, and that yielded us a result. Our central estimate from that output is $1.3 billion in annual savings if those 7 products existed in the U.S. market today in their generic form. Could be a little bit higher, could be a little bit lower. Depends exactly how many generic manufacturers are able to get into that market. Depends on how much market share they're able to capture. So there's a range of estimates that we present in the paper, but our central estimate is $1.3 billion.
So, Alex, I don't know how the question is going to come out, but I've dealt with, questions related to the FDA, interviewed many, many FDA directors over generations of them. I guess my best sense is that, depending on what part of the FDA you want to come up, a lot of the code, the processes were, developed decades ago, not all the time, and they're certainly updated, so I don't want to create any false critiques of the FDA. But there are processes that they develop around the subject of keeping the public safe, and Europe and Canada may have different systems that have evolved. So I guess my question to you is: are there parts of that process of looking at complex generics, or looking at the interaction of devices with active ingredients, or the dosing process, or what are the nuts and bolts of the critique, if you will, that you think need to be changed, if anything, within the U.S. FDA?
Sure. So first of all, I'd say that I don't think we should think of this as a system that was created decades ago and that we're stuck in the same process. I mean, that's not what you're suggesting, but it's an evolving process. The FDA is constantly working with an applicant to bring an application through the review appropriately and efficiently as they can. And as Dr. Choi described, they call these products complex for a reason, right? And so each one of them is unique. The reason that they're complex may vary from product to product. It may be that it's a cream. It may be that it's associated with a device like an inhaler. So it's both the ingredient that's in the inhaler and the inhaler itself together that need to be replicated by the generic manufacturer, or a host of other reasons that make these products complex. So in many cases, it's really a case-by-case issue where the agency is saying to the applicant, we need you to prove to us, we need you to demonstrate the safety and efficacy of the product, and in this particular case, we need this particular information. And so because every one of them is a bit unique, it's hard to come up with a rigid set of rules that will govern the whole thing. But what we know is that the FDA is making progress, has made progress. And you mentioned the GDUFA. So we had GDUFA 1, now we're in GDUFA 2, we're getting ready for GDUFA 3. And what we saw in GDUFA 2 was a whole set of new processes, the intent of which is to accelerate the approval of complex generics. What we haven't seen from that is we haven't seen a whole bunch we haven't seen all of the, I shouldn't say I haven't seen any, but we haven't seen all of the complex generics finish their way through that pipeline. But we are seeing a lot more applicants and a lot more dialogue between the generic manufacturers and the FDA in an effort to get over that finish line and get to market.
Alex, I invited a lot of people today online to watch this, including on my own Facebook page, who may not know what GDUFA is. So I just want them to know it's the Generic Drug User Fee Amendment. So I just want to kind of put that out there, that Google it, you'll learn more. Let me ask you another question. I mean, because you're in this, you and I have talked before about this and a lot of regulatory issues. You sort of feel where gravity is taking you. Is gravity taking us in the right direction on complex generics, or do you think you have to tweak the way gravity works to get there? In other words, is the U.S. system going the right way, and so it will require minimal effort, with GDUFA, with others, or is this a big lift to try to, get the cost savings that you're talking about, to try to get, I don't know whether to call it greater efficiencies or greater trust in the data sharing, I guess, across certain national lines? Where do you feel this is going?
My sense is that all of the stakeholders are pulling in the same direction, the right direction, right? And so this is not an issue where on one side of the table, they want to slow things down, and on the other side of the table, they're begging to make efficiencies and improvements. This is an issue where we've heard from Janet Woodcock, we heard from former Commissioner Scott Gottlieb, we've heard from lawmakers, and we've heard from the industry, AAM and individual generic manufacturers, all saying, hey, let's figure out a way to bring more competition, not just necessarily one generic competitor. Let's figure out a way that anyone who's capable of making a generic version of a complex product can get through the approval process. Let's have an approval process. Of course, we need to have a thorough and robust approval process, but let's have it be clear and let's have it be, well-resourced, so that everyone can work together to accelerate that. I think that's one of the issues that they're going to be talking about when they reauthorize the legislation. And I think it's the specific solutions, I think, are going to be technical. They're not issues that are addressed in the paper. They're not problems that I've solved yet. But I think that at least everyone has the same goal, which is to figure out how to bring savings to the market sooner and more
Alex,
predictably.
Real quick, they're cutting me off here, but I'm going to be talking to Congressman Peter Welch, an old friend, and Congressman Brett Guthrie shortly, both of whom are very involved in this. What question do you think is most important that they answer?
You want me to do your job? Sure. So there's an absolute role for congressional oversight in this process. The GDUFA will come up for a vote. And they need to, they have the right and quite frankly, the obligation to ask, in their oversight capacity, to ask the FDA, why are things taking longer now? What are the impediments? And what can the FDA do in an efficient way to accelerate those processes? I know they're both interested in the answers to those questions. They've been in dialogue, I'm sure, with the FDA, and the more that we can bring that discussion, to a larger audience, to this audience, I think the more all of us are going to learn.
Well, Alex Brill, Resident Fellow, American Enterprise Institute, I want to thank you because I always learn from you, and thanks for putting up with some of my humor, too. So thanks so much for joining us today. Congratulations on the release of your report, which I do look forward to receiving, potential savings from accelerating U.S. approval of complex generics, which is out today from, I guess, Matrix Global Advisors, right? So
That's right.
Great. Thank you so much.
That's right. Okay. Thanks for having me on, Steve.